We're going to do a quick video on one of the ways that we can do custom fonts on web pages. You'll recall that up to this point, when we've been looking at what fonts we can use on the page, that we're basically limited to the standard font families that we find in Dreamweaver. In other words, if I come to a page, I'm in Dreamweaver at the moment, but I could be in a web browser as well. And we have live type. I can highlight this type right here. And in Dreamweaver, I can go take a look at what the font is. We'll click on the body tag, because that's typically where we call out our base font. And look down here in the CSS Designer. And yes, I see that my font family is called out here on the body tag. If I click on that, we get to see the various font families that are available. This one is set to Verdana, Arial, Helvetica, which is not in our list, which just means that it came from an older version of Dreamweaver. They've rearranged these font families in Dreamweaver CC. But all of these fonts that we see here, these are the standard ones that we assume are going to be available on other people's computers. As you recall, when you are sitting at your computer and you go to load a web page, it downloads the HTML file, and then it requests a font, and it's requesting a font from your computer. And so the way all of these font families work, let's go with the first one here. If this was what was selected, then the file is saying, okay, display this in Baskerville. Well, if you don't have Baskerville, then use Palatino linotype, and if you don't have it, then use Palatino, and if not, then use Century Schoolbook, and if you don't have that, use Times New Roman, and if you still don't have that, then just use a serif font. So that's how our font families work. But all of these it's reliant on these being on your computer. Okay, so that's our body type. Our headline's the same thing. We also know that the only other way that we could have, so far, the only other way that we could have a different typeface showing, different font showing, is if we did it in a graphical manner. In other words, if I was working on my design, I was working on a mood board, or if I was working on a design comp, and I decided to set a piece of type, and so in Photoshop I used my text tool, and I typed my headline, homepage in this case, or about us, something like that, and I picked from one of the fonts that's installed on the computer, then I can change it to that. But then if it's something unusual, I would have to save that off as an image, and then in Dreamweaver I would insert that image so it links to that image. So there's no real type there. Remember, it's a picture of letters. Nothing can read it. Search engines can't see it. Screen readers can't see it. We use alt text, which helps, but that's all that does. So at this point, that's the only way we have seen to put different fonts on the face, which is pretty limiting. So I want to look at two different ways, probably going to be two different videos though, that we can insert custom fonts into our pages. The first one is by using Google Fonts, and I'm going to change over to, I'm running Safari today, and I have a face up here. So if you go to google.com/fonts, and actually the rest of this URL isn't necessary, we can get to a service from Google called Google Fonts. If I do the Start Choosing Fonts, you get a little description here. But if I use the Start Choosing Fonts, then you get to just the standard google.com/fonts. So Google, as with a lot of its services, has created this free service for us to use, and it's actually a very valuable service. It has just a ton of fonts out here. If you start scrolling, as you get further down, you'll notice that the scroll bar all over here just keeps refreshing itself and adding more and more fonts. I actually don't know how many fonts they have out here right now. I should go Google that. But all these fonts are available for us to use, and all of these are live fonts when we put them on our web pages. So nice selection out here, much more than we've ever had before. There are paid services out there that work this way, but at this point I'm not quite sure why you would go beyond Google Fonts. This one's going to work real well for us. So let's look at how we can integrate this into our page, and then as we go I'll explain to you how it's working. So when we want to find ourselves a font, we can just scroll all down through here. Also, we can look at the filter settings over on the side here. So I can go to all categories, so we can select between serif and sans serif and display and handwriting and monospace. I'm going to replace the font that's on my body tag. So this will be my primary font on the page. So I want to stick with a sans serif. So I'm going to turn off some of these others. Okay, so I have it just down to sans serif fonts. So it's limited that for me. You can come here and you can limit it by thickness and by slant and width. There are a lot of settings that you can work with here. I'm not going to bother with those right now. The other one I want to point out is where it says styles right here. So it says you get a show all styles. I'm going to click on that. Now, nothing changed so far on my screen, but let's scroll a little bit. What I want to point out is how in some of these, okay, let's start with this one, Denk 1. You see that there's just one weight of this font, okay? There's not a normal and a bold. There's not an italic. It only has the one weight available. But if I scroll down, this one that's coming up right after it, you see it's coming up with a thin 100, an extra light 200, a light, a normal, a medium, a semi-bold, a bold. My computer's not scrolling. There we go. An extra bold, an ultra bold, and then it has all of those in italic as well. Okay, so quite a few options on this one here. This one's called EXO. It has 18 styles. So lots of different styles available. So depending on how you're going to use this, if you're only going to use it for a headline, then maybe it doesn't matter to you whether it has other styles. In this case, I'm looking at using it for my body text. So I'd like to have some different weights available. So if I'm going to use it throughout, I probably want to work with a normal, but there may be times that I want a bold or an italic or even a bold italic on it. So you know what, I'm going to choose EXO as my example right now for a video. It has all these great weights for it. So I'm just going to come over and click Add to Collection. Okay, changed my screen a little bit, made this shorter up here. It's added it to my list down here. Now you could, of course, run through here and pick some more typefaces if you would like. I'm going to just pick the one for our example right now. Obviously, you want to limit yourself on how many fonts you're putting on your page. 2 is often a nice limit for you. Okay, so I've selected one. So this is our navigation button, or buttons down here. I've done the choose. I'm going to go ahead and click on Review. When you go to Review, they give you an option of seeing this font, different sizes. I can show it showing as a headline right now. I could look at it as a paragraph in different sizes. So this is just a review type of thing. I can show in the different weights. I'm happy with this one, so I'm going to keep moving. So I have one more button here. I have my Use button. You can go ahead and click on that. Okay, they're assuring us that we're almost done. So let's go see what they've given us. Okay, choose the styles that you want. So it listed all of the different styles that this is available in. So we need to actually select the ones we want to use. We could select them all, but one of the things we need to keep in mind is that this font information is being downloaded to our page, and so we're sending more information. There's this little gauge up here on the side that we want to look at right now. So all we have selected right now is normal. Weight of 400. By the way, you're probably not accustomed to seeing the numbers. A lot of the time we just have a normal weight. You're used to seeing a bold, maybe you're used to seeing italic. But when you get into a lot of weights, they start using these numbers for the different weights. So 400 is normal. Bold is 700. So what I want to point out here is that as I add more styles to it, my page load time increases. So right now it's saying that it's 20 just for this one weight. So I probably want an italic, which took me to 40, and I want a bold, and maybe even a bold italic, and that takes me up to 80. Now these numbers, as far as I can tell, are just relative numbers. So obviously it's increasing as I add more. They're saying I'm right on the verge between a green and a yellow, a caution area. I'm definitely not up in the red right now. The main point being that I'm adding more to the download that they're sending, the content that they're sending down to my page. Obviously, if I was to go, let's go check all of these guys and see what that does to my page. I'm moving on up there. Okay, all the weights pushes me up to a 360. Pushes me up in the red. So they're just warning me that it's going to be slower the more I add. So I don't need all of these weights. I like that I have the option of them and I can pick exactly what I want. Like maybe I wanted to use a thin or a light instead of a normal. In this case, I'm going to stick with a normal though, because it's my standard body copy. So I'm going to go with my basics, a normal italic, a bold, and a bold italic. Stick with this download, or this page load speed I get right here. Okay, so we need to select those. Scroll on down a little bit. Okay, we get to choose the character set that we want. It's offering it to me in Latin, which are the characters we're accustomed to. They have a Latin extended. I'm not sure what's available in that. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I was working with one the other day that offered me Vietnamese characters, so that had been the first time I'd seen those available here. So I'm good with Latin. I'm going to stick with that. Now we come down to the point that they start giving us some code. So Google works really well. They also do a nice setup for us. So they're going to give me the actual code that I need to create this. So we'll look at the code they've given us here, and we get a link. So it's an HTML tag. We can tell by the bracket that's on it there. So I don't know if you recall what the link is used. Hopefully that looks familiar, but we see links on a regular basis in the head section of our HTML, and that's the HTML tag that's used when we're linking to a CSS file. So if we look at this, if we look across it, we can look down the line and see that this is CSS that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this code. I'm going to highlight the whole thing. I'm going to click and drag across, and then I'm going to go up and copy this code. And then I'm ready to go back over to Dreamweaver and start doing some work in here. So here's my page. This should be a familiar page to you. It's basic setup. And I go back to split view. Actually, I'm going to go on to code view so we can see a little bit more. So there's the link, our existing link that I was referring to a minute ago. So you see it links. The href points to the file. It's pointing to a local file, styles.css. It references, it tells us it's a style sheet. It's a CSS file. Okay. So I'm going to add this one directly above that one. So I'm going to hit a return right there and paste that one I copied. And just to look real quick, again, it's a link like we were seeing. The href, though, points to http:// which we know means go out on the web. Go to the internet and look for this. Then we get fonts.googleapis.com, so that's a website. /CSS, and then we get the question mark, which means it's going to do a database query. So it's looking for family. The family equals XO. We get the colon, and here's the weights I've asked for. So those are the 4 weights that I requested. Okay. Again, it's telling us it's a style sheet and it's CSS. Okay. So it's pretty familiar. It's very similar to the one that we've seen down here for our styles. But I wanted to point that out. So that's the first thing we have to do with our code, is we need to paste this link into the head section of our HTML file. So what this is doing is these fonts reside out on Google's servers. So to use these fonts, we have to link to them. So this is pointing out to the Google server saying, go get these fonts, grab these particular weights for us, and we're going to use those. Okay, go back to split view. And let's flip back over to Safari where we were working. Okay, the one last piece of code, they tell us to integrate the fonts into our CSS. So if you look at this, this should look familiar, look like CSS code. It is part of a CSS rule right here. So this is defining the font family. And there's our font name, XO. Notice that it's in single quotes here. They give us some sample over here, sample code. You notice this is as if we were calling out an H1. There's our familiar bracket, and then they call out the font family right there, and then they call out a font weight right there, and then we close the bracket. So that's a full CSS rule, okay? So they're giving us an example. So we're going to add this to existing CSS, and because I'm going to modify the font family on my body tag, I know that rule exists. All I really want from here is the name of the font. So I'm going to highlight the font name with the single quotes on it because that's how they call it out. I'm going to come up here and copy it so that I can put that to use. And then go back over to Dreamweaver. Okay, this is the font that I'm wanting to modify. I know that that rule is the body tag. We were looking at that a few minutes ago. There's the body tag right there. See, there it is called out right there. Now, because I have the font name copied and have it in memory, this is going to be easiest to do in code view. So I could come up here to the upper left corner, and you see right here I could click into my styles.css. The other way we could do it, and it'd be easy to find because I don't have much in my CSS file right now, but I did want to show you, because I don't think I've shown you this yet, that if you want to edit a rule here in code, you can click on it and then do a right click and click on the go to code, and you see how it took me right to the rule over here. So there's my cursor right there. There's the rule. So I have that font name in memory. The font family is what I want to modify. I want this to be my first choice for the font. So I'm going to put it in front of Verdana here. Being at the front of the list, it's my first choice. So click in front of Verdana and do a paste. Now, because it's a list, it's going to be confused by this right now. So I need to put a comma between it. So I'm going to do a comma space. So now it's a list. So now it says my font family, first choice is EXO. If you don't have it, then use Verdana. If not, then Arial, then Helvetica, then sans serif. Okay, so now I've modified my rule. So if I click over here, you notice it has not changed anything. Actually, I'm going to go to Design View so we can see our page better. But if I go to Live View, it's being a little bit slow, so it's actually looking out to the server. Notice how it's changed. And I did it on the body tag, so it changed everything on the page. So now that's my base font. EXO is being used all across my page right now. So only working in live view because it had to actually go look for the Google server to display it to me. Okay, so basically what it's doing, let me go back to my source code here. Show you one more time how we modified our code and how this is working. So we added two things to our file here. After selecting our font, it gave us the code. So now when you go to load an HTML page, it of course starts at the top. It starts loading down. It hits this point here that it gets to this link HTML tag, and it runs out to the web. It goes to Google servers. It says, I need this family EXO, and I need it in these weights. That information is downloaded to your local computer. So you now have this font information available to you. Okay, as it continues on, it now hits the link tag that tells it to load our styles. And then as it starts into our styles sheet, okay, so this is our style sheet, it starts working through here. When we go to define our body tag, it comes down to font family, and it's actually defining that one. So now it knows about the EXO font because we've pulled that from the Google servers, and it can load that there. So it continues on, loads the rest of our CSS, and then it would continue on into our HTML file, loading our page. So that's a really pretty straightforward way of using or creating some custom fonts in your pages using Google Fonts. Really nice service they've created and made available to us for free.